Okay, April 26th, 2022, our Issues Committee meeting. We're all here and we will start. You know, John Domiglio's not here.
He's here.
Got to work late. Oh, he's here.
He is here.
Good.
But,
Excellent.
The only committee member not here right now is Pat Nave.
Pat's not gonna make it. They're on a vacation trip, and he said if he had a signal out there, he would log on.
Pat,
Well, they're at a campsite, so.
go ahead and continue your vacation, please. Anyway,
All right, let me get
everybody's here.
this. Let me get the screen going.
So John Barbera is our primary host this evening.
Why did
Welcome,
it-
everyone.
Yeah, John and Dan, I just barely made it. I'm gonna have to leave early, just to let you know.
Well, it's all right. We'll go. That's fine, John. Thank you. Thank you for making the effort.
Hey,
Appreciate
Vic,
it.
do me a favor, bring up the agenda. It didn't take. Please.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you get that email from Matthew?
Yes, I did, and I have it ready to share.
Me, okay, good.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Uh-huh.
And I sent you the information too on him. I told Matt that to make sure he tells you.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Victor.
Mhm.
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, we really don't need it, but there's only a,
Here, hold on just a second.
okay.
Bringing Angus in here.
That's fine.
Welcome, everybody. I will now go to, right away to public comments and non-agenda items. If anybody has anything they would like to share.
Hello, Lucy.
Does Angus want to say something more than that?
I'm sure he does.
Okay, nobody has anything. I will give you an update real quick. They're thinking that hopefully by the end of May, beginning of June, the skate park should be open. There'll be a few things, a party going on. They'll have a big day there. There'll be some music, food, and possibly a couple of celebrities. And they have a few things going on that I've put on social media for them. Benefit show that they're doing that has a bunch of shirts, skate shirts and jerseys and stuff. But it's looking good. If anybody has passed by there or gone down to see it on Channel Street, great murals. Dan, I'm gonna mute you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So yeah, on that portion, like I said, they've got some really great murals, and a lot of the stuff is almost just about done. So they'll be doing another massive cleanup, he says, and where they'll try to get all the other some of the stuff moved and have the cars rearranged where to park better and all that. So that's it on that. And I had some emails and that people have sent me throughout our Northwest area and even a couple of blocks out, that sidewalks are really are horrendous mess on some of these places. And also alleys. There are just a lot of big potholes. And looks like a mogul out in the desert for a dune buggy to go up and down. So Dan and I will take a look at some of these things, hopefully this Sunday. And so we can have something for the next meeting. And also we'll have, we're going to try to see if we contact them to see what procedures and what we got to do. And have a suggestion that maybe we get the neighborhood in those areas to write up a letter and then sign it, have their signatures on it, showing that that this is unacceptable anymore. but it's pretty bad. If you go around San Pedro, you'll see some of these. I mean, trees are just uprooting the sidewalks to where electric scooter, wheelchair. I mean, it's very hard. Some even have where they're so high, the curb that you can actually crawl underneath. A kid can crawl under there, and that's pretty dangerous. So it's just not good. Not good for good old SP. So with that, any comments anybody has on that?
John?
Yeah.
May I just, this is sort of tagging on as public comment to your agenda item, but in addition to the sidewalks, we're getting lots of input about alleyways as well. And we've heard in the past how difficult it is to get work done in alleys and how it really requires a neighborhood effort. Not in addition to our input, it requires neighbors' input, and that's something we want to look at as well. Maybe come up with a format to allow people to request work be done. And this is just a public comment, so we'll come back with more of that along with the sidewalks later.
All right. All right, Vic, if you want, Vic, you can take this off. Okay, and I believe Scott and Kay are here. I'm going to make them both analysts. Okay, so Scott and Kay, you both have, if you got videos you want to click on and, you know, introduce to everybody. I can introduce you to people. We have Chuck Hart. I don't know what part of the screen he's on yours, but it says DET Hawk.
Yes.
All right. And then we have David Rivera and Victor Christensen, John DeMiglio, and Dan Dixon, and myself, you know, John Barbera. So
Great. Thanks, John, for having us. I'm Scott Green with Metro. And I understand that there's in the Northwest San Pedro area, you know, that you have some requests for additional service. So I think we want to leave some time, you know, to hear about your own ideas and proposals. But first, if you want, John, I can start out by just giving an overview of Metro's services in San Pedro, and I think Kay will probably want to do the same. I have a very short presentation. If I can pull that up here. Let's see. I can share my screen. Okay.
hang
Yeah,
on,
so
I'll make,
Metro,
hang on, I'll make you a,
I already did.
you made him a co-host?
Yep.
Okay.
So Scott, you should be able to share now.
okay, thank you. Let me see if I can find what I wanted to share here. And can you guys see my screen yet?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, let me try again.
It's a process.
Yeah. Share. Okay, I hit the button
Yay.
there.
Here we go.
I think you got it.
Yep.
And I'll start the slideshow. So yeah, thanks again for inviting us. Now, Metro is a regional service provider, and through most of LA County, and so we're happy to serve San Pedro as well with four bus routes presently. And I'll just go through those four routes real briefly and talk about the next gen bus plan changes. We completed the next gen bus plan in 2020, and it was approved by the MTA board. So we have been implementing changes in the system, but not in San Pedro yet. you still have the original network of the 4 metro routes plus the LA DOT. And there is actually one Palos Verdes Peninsula transit line that comes down 7th Street in San Pedro. But line 205, you may be already familiar with this route. It runs on Western Avenue in your area and transitions over to downtown San Pedro eventually via 1st Street. And the next gen change would remove it from 1st Street and put it on 7th Street in both directions. Right now, the route is kind of confusing. It's sort of the orange dotted route in the lower part of the map on 1st Street and on 19th Street, and it's also on 7th Street for a ways there. So it's kind of like a Z in downtown San Pedro, and it's sort of hard to understand. So we're going to simplify that by moving line 205 to 7th Street in downtown San Pedro. It would remain on Western Avenue going north and south in your area. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly, and we can always come back later if you have additional questions. The next route I was going to speak about is line 246, and it runs from the Harbor Gateway Transit Center in the north south to Paseo del Mar, and it's mostly on Pacific. In fact, almost completely on Pacific Avenue in San Pedro, and so we are proposing to change it to Gaffey Street. So at Channel Street, where the new skate park is going to open, the bus would be turning over to Gaffey and then running up and down Gaffey to all the way up to Anaheim Street. And the reason we're making this change is because there's not much ridership on John Gibson, where the bus is running today. The 246 runs on John Gibson and Harry Bridges. It does begin to pick up riders though in Wilmington on Avalon Boulevard, especially. So so the reroute would take it up Gaffey, as I said, and then over Anaheim Street to Avalon Boulevard, and then regular route. The reason this change is happening is because line 550, which runs on Gaffey today, and I have it in the next slide, would be discontinued, at least in San Pedro. And so the 246 would essentially replace the 550 in your area. Although the 550 would continue to exist in the peak hours primarily for USC commuters. So we'd run it from the Harbor Gateway Transit Center north, only in the peak hours and only up to USC. So that's a pretty major change that we have not implemented yet. It's continuing to run today through San Pedro every 60 minutes, 7 days a week. And the last slide, I want to just mention that you have the J line or Silver line, we used to call it, 950 route going mostly on the Harbor Freeway. But then in San Pedro, it does do some local stops along Pacific Avenue. Same as the 246, although the 246, as I mentioned, goes all the way down to Paseo del Mar, whereas the 950 stops at Pacific and 21st is the layover for this bus route, which is coming all the way from El Monte, and I believe it's the longest route in our system at almost 40 miles. Due to get electric battery buses sometime soon, the buses are on order. And we're trying to convert some of the operating facilities in order to charge these battery electric buses that are going to be here probably in about a year or so. So that's kind of the overview for me. I did want to mention that it is very difficult to serve San Pedro because you have old street network with some really tight turns, and you have the hills, and some of the concerns with establishing new routes, would obviously be safety. But I wanted to mention also that the Americans with Disabilities Act governs everything we do in terms of, having accessible buses and accessible bus stops. So just to build on your previous agenda item about the sidewalks, that could be a major issue for Metro or, for anybody who's trying to provide public transportation in San Pedro, because, if it's not accessible, then we're not allowed to do it. And so that's the two thoughts I wanted to leave you with are safety and the ADA really govern everything we do at Metro. So that pretty much concludes my report. And I think, we might want to hear from Kay first before we go into questions, although I'll leave it up to you, John.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Dan, what do you think? We should let him ask
Yeah.
questions?
I'd certainly like to hear from Kay.
Okay, I'm going to stop
Primarily,
sharing.
I guess, to talk about how DOT transportation, like the dash line, interacts with Metro, if it does at all. What are the nexuses of the two services? And is there a chance well, it's too long a question to ask right now. If we can hear from Kay, thank you, and then get into some of the nitty gritty.
Sure.
Hang on a second. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, that same as Dan, because I don't think these guys handle the dash line. And like you said, the streets are smaller and the dash lines can get in a lot better to some of these streets. And since that seems like they're eliminating a line, maybe we can add some short dash lines in there to get the people from downtown San Pedro all the way up to Western.
Thank you. Yeah, if you'd go ahead, that'd be great.
Sure. No problem. Okay. Hi, everyone.
Do you need to share
Yes.
anything where you need?
Yes. Yes, please. Yeah, I do have a short presentation as well.
Okay. There you go.
All right. There we go. Okay, window. Nice. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. All right. Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kei Sasaki. I'm a service planner at LADOT Transit. And so, of course, as Scott mentioned, LADOT, we're in charge of the dash routes. And we do have one dash route down in San Pedro. Actually, two. One is a commuter express that goes from the waterfront to Long Beach. And then, of course, this one, San Pedro. This one is the local connector one. So this is the current alignment here, and then we're going to be changing it to this one. But first, I just want to mention, like Metro's next gen changes, we did get a lot of funding and investment and approval from our city council to take a look at all of our existing routes and see if we can optimize and kind of tweak the routes a little bit to serve the residents of these dash routes a little bit better. And so that was the impetus of this project that we're currently in the midst of, is this network reroute. And San Pedro is one of those dash routes that will change due to these new council approved funding to improve this route. And so we have two changes coming. We got the new route alignment, which I'll go into later. And then the second part is that we want to be increasing frequency on our dash route. So right now we're at 20 minutes headways. And then as we get more funding and vehicles and drivers, we want to move this up to 15. So that's something that we're working on doing at the moment. Okay, and so this map here kind of shows what the changes will be. Maybe it's a little hard to see because they overlap a little bit, but the green is the current route. And so it starts right up here where the big shopping center is, goes on Summerland, and then comes down to the waterfront here, and then down on Pacific. Oops, sorry. Down on Pacific, and it does this little loop here and then goes back. So this is what the route is currently. But taking a look at Metro's proposed changes and how we can connect better with the new routes that's going to be coming down into San Pedro, we decided to make a couple changes to this route. So first change is that we're going to be getting off of Summerlin, and I believe this is First Street. Going down First Street, it's better, much more of a straightforward route, and it gives us opportunities to connect to Metro. And then instead of going down here, we wanted to, shorten the route a little bit. I think there's going to be coverage down here by Metro, and so we don't want to, duplicate any service. But this will allow us to, shorten the run times and therefore decrease the headways down to 15. And then it's going to come down here. I believe this is Pacific. And then, Dash Route's all about providing local connections. And we wanted to serve the high school a little bit better. So it's going to come down here. This is where the high school is, and then continue to make this loop. So those are the big changes for this route. Let's see. So again, going down First Street instead of Summerlin, and then down onto Pacific instead of Center. And we won't be serving the waterfront, but our existing Commuter Express 142 will continue to pick up passengers here and then go across the bridge to Long Beach. So that service will remain. It's going to go down on 13th to serve the San Pedro High School. And then still, we're going to be doing this loop. And with our changes, I think we're still able to maintain that transfer connection with Metro, the J line, and other local routes that's going to be coming through to Metro. So those are the big changes coming to San Pedro. So that's my presentation. And I can open it up for any questions or comments.
If you, let's see, I have some people with some questions here. So I'm not sure who was first. I wasn't paying attention. Vic?
Who do you
Okay,
see?
go Vic.
Don't laugh too hard when you hear the question, but do either of your respective organizations have any pull with the organizations that would be in charge of repairing the sidewalks so that you could route your service through those areas? We'd like to go there, but we can't because your sidewalks are all messed up, type of thing.
That's a good question. I think probably the best, avenue to maybe get those changes seen is probably through the council district. If you can get in touch with like maybe the plant or the transportation deputy in the council district, I think they'll know who to go in terms of, our city departments to be able to make those, get the work done on the sidewalks.
Thank you.
John DeMiglio.
Yeah, hi. I've been proposing a line coming from Park Plaza, CVS Pharmacy, down to Target. And so the lower part of San Pedro can get off on Gaffey, use Target, and get on a bus dash line and go straight up to CVS Pharmacy area, so they can shop and use all the restaurants and stuff up that way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I put your thing up, John.
Yeah, I drew this out quite a few years ago. and it shows a line, because there's a bus stop in Park Plaza at the CVS pharmacy, and then it goes up to Western, and then it goes down to Summerlin, I think it is. But if we can extend that bus line going from CVS pharmacy all the way down to Capitol, there's a route that goes that way, and down to Target area and make a turn and come back up, I think it would benefit the community, all of San Pedro. And also it would connect to the buses on Gaffey and everything else, so people can get around a little better.
If I may attach to what John is saying, this addresses changes in demographics here in our area. That in Northwest San Pedro, which is our neighborhood, demographics are changing. People are aging in their homes, and at the same time, and maybe are not quite as comfortable driving as they used to be. And that's in tandem with the current phase in society of young people not learning to drive as quickly as they used to, if at all. And it also, the kind of localization of service that John's proposing, extension of local service, is the kind of thing that would assist with, would have obvious, I think, environmental benefits. But it's really about moving people in an era when how people move is changing. And I guess that goes back to what I was asking earlier. What is the interface between the two agencies? Can you see something like a dash line connecting directly to a metro line stop in this area? And what short of an act of Congress does it take to implement a change such as John DeMeglio is proposing? And that's not meant to be combative. We're really curious about how the process works and how you study the need for changes in routes. Thank you.
David Rivera.
Yeah, Kay, and could we get, if we go on your website, can we get copies of that presentation you made with the charts and stuff?
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to send that over to John, and then maybe he can share it out to the group.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a lot of senior friends that depend on that dot line, you know, and
Yeah.
appreciate the 15-minute interval also, because that keeps them from waiting and all that stuff, and just jump right on the bus. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, no problem. All right. Sure. I guess I can start off with kind of answering Dan's question about how difficult would it be to connect to from the CVS that where that Sprouts is, and then in and out to that Target. So I would mention that, you know, this route alignment was something that was approved by City Council, and so, you know, whenever we can, we like to stick to the approved alignment. And so, you know, that kind of raises an issue there, because this was a route that was, you know, approved officially by council. And then another thing is probably the lack of resources for us, because, you know, any sort of route extension, especially as big as this one, because if it goes from Target to the CVS, it almost creates like an S shape throughout San Pedro. And so, you know, that would require definitely more buses. And especially now that we want to kind of operate all our vehicles as electric buses, you know, we will be replacing the fleet, and we have like a limited number of buses that we can operate throughout our network. So, we would have to be pulling, vehicles that's been assigned to another dash route to be able to implement any sort of, extensive changes to the route. So those are probably the two biggest issues that I see. I don't know, Scott, do you have any insight into maybe like the local dash routes that kind of serve the Northwest San Pedro area?
Yeah, I think you answered it, okay. But there's just the one dash route, and it would require additional resources to extend it. I'd point out that most of the connections with Metro today are made, at First and Pacific or 7th and Pacific. Those tend to be the transfer areas between Metro and LADOT. But I can understand how there's additional needs that aren't being met. And I think to sort of further flesh out what John was talking about, and Dan, that we do a lot of public outreach to gather ideas and suggestions from our riders. And at least for the next gen bus plan, we did a number of workshops in the community. There was one in Wilmington. We didn't quite get to San Pedro, but we are required to do a public process anytime we make major service changes, and we worked harder at Next Gen than any other service change in my 35 years at the RTD and Metro. So I think Kay can point to similar outreach that was done for the LADOT dash restructuring study, because they have to deal with so many communities in the city of LA, all the way up to San Fernando Valley, and balance sort of the competing requests for additional service by going to the city council. But even before they do that, they have extensive public outreach as well, just like Metro. So I would say that although, Capitol in your area, Northwest San Pedro, Capitol Street doesn't have service yet, that, you keep it on the burner and keep asking for it, because there will be, additional public outreach meetings and restructuring studies in the future. It's just that right now we both LADOT and Metro pretty much just completed a major restructuring study, and we don't do these probably but every 10 to 20 years. So that's some of the background on how Metro made the changes. I mean, we also did a lot of technical analysis to try to identify where people would ride the most, and from an equity perspective, we found that people are making shorter trips these days, and they're making trips at all hours of the day, not just in the peak hours anymore. So one of our major efforts is to try to boost the frequency in the midday. And we have a nationwide shortage of labor right now, and the transit industry is no different. We unfortunately don't have enough bus drivers essentially to roll out the next gen plan at the frequencies that we wanted to. But yeah, that 15-minute frequency on the dash would make it very attractive in San Pedro. And I know their low fares too are was 50 cents, I think, compared to Metro, was charged $1.75 a ride. So there's a lot going for the dash. And I've probably spoken enough on it. Kay, did you want to follow up on anything?
No, that was a great summary. But yeah, I think just to add, like, if there are places that can't be served by fixed service, we do have City Ride, which is our dollar ride option. So there are ways to be able to fill in those gaps in services for sure.
Okay, we have Lori Jacobs. Go ahead.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Scott, I'm the one that reached out to you from David Lejeune with the South Bay City Council of Governments. So I really appreciate that, and you arranging Kay to be here too. There's no question that, with Measure M, San Pedro got the short end of the stick we're a peninsula, and so the tendency has not been to look at the peninsula in the same way that some of the other routes are looked at. I understand everything that you're saying here. I will say, as far as this drawing, the idea of having a way to come down Capitol, it's kind of a main artery. It would not be feasible to go through Park Western. There's an elementary school there that already gets double parking and backed up, and that would not work. But having something coming down Capitol, quite a few homes are being built at Ponte Vista. And while you have the Metro line going along Western, those people, would have no way to get down to Target, to Gaffey, to connect to the Metro there. So this is something that should be looked at. I do not recall our council member asking for any input. Maybe I missed it, but I don't remember that. We will have a new council member at the end of the year. So perhaps this group can do a proposal to our new council member. But Scott, are you saying that, and Kay, that like we can try, but it really is only looked at every decade?
Yeah, I mean, that's in rough terms. We don't do these restructuring studies very often, at least at Metro. And LADOT maybe is a little different. They're smaller and a little more flexible than we are, but transit service, is very expensive, and it's really not cost effective unless people ride it. And so that's one of the balancing acts that we have, because Metro, serves almost the entire LA County, but really most of the riders are in our core service area, which is, kind of north of Rosecrans Avenue, moving up towards downtown and including Hollywood. And so we get a lot of business in there, a lot of riders,
Sure.
because, there's fewer people that have resources at their disposal. Maybe they don't have a car, or they're low income.
Well,
and
Scott,
so-
I'd like to point out that quite a bit of the new affordable housing being proposed everywhere includes little to no parking,
Mhm.
especially when they're looking at, helping house people with affordable housing. They're assuming that they can't afford a car. Plus, I read a lot of the promotional stuff that the Metro puts out, encouraging people, especially as you get more electric buses, to be more environmentally responsible. So I'm hoping that we could not have to wait another decade, and we could put some arguments together to at least consider having a line coming down Capitol.
Yeah, I understand, Lori, and thank you, by the way, for getting me into this meeting. I just wanted to maybe say a little defense of Metro, that the Silver Line 950 connection to San Pedro is something that shouldn't be taken for granted, because in the original Next Gen study, it was proposed to be discontinued, and the politicians on our board, they spoke up to keep that 950 connection to San Pedro. So although I know you guys aren't getting rail, for example, because you mentioned Measure M, which is funding a lot of rail and highway projects as well. So as far as getting the short end of the stick in San Pedro, as you mentioned, I just wanted to point out, you still do have the Silver Line, which we brand it as if it were rail. It's a rail line with rubber tires, so to speak.
Okay.
With frequent service, and it's very fast, and it
Okay.
connects San Pedro to the rest of the region.
Well, thank you very much. And just keep in mind too, that we're not flatland here. We have a lot of hills, so it's
Yes.
harder to walk up and down the hills to the bus stops. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we should do like they do in San Francisco. The trolley goes up and down. Matt DeMiglio.
Yeah, I understand, the reasonings that you guys don't want to spend the money, but you're eliminating the 550 on Gaffey. You're rerouting the 47 from Pacific to Gaffey. So you're saving money there. And this is, we're overlooked here. We're completely overlooked. And this is a necessity, and I wish you guys would look at it. because it's something that's needed for all areas of San Pedro, lower part going to Target and also going to Western. I appreciate if you look into that. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, Matt, your
Yeah,
turn.
ready for, yeah, he doesn't know I'm on. Hi, Dad. First of all, I want to say hi, everybody. You guys probably haven't heard from me for a couple of years. Might be making a comeback. We'll see. I just wanted to say, it's kind of disappointing to hear all the lines being taken out. It sounds like we're making more of an interest in going up 7th Street to Palos Verdes and making a interest going towards Wilmington, but we're kind of forgetting about San Pedro. That it's a big hill on Capitol. We need to include that area. I've taken the buses many times from Port Los Angeles High School on 7th Street to all the way back to my house, but I had to walk all the way down from Western all the way down, we'll say a block above Gaffey, just to generalize it. And it's just because there's no bus line that's bringing us down. That's over a 1.5 mile walk. And I was in high school at the time. I could do it, but other people in their elderly ages, they can't make that walk. I know we can't make any changes now, but I think our Dash and Metro line needs to know that our neighborhood council should be involved and reached out to better, because I think Metro had said that they didn't do that good of a job getting San Pedro involved. And myself personally, I think you guys might have just put it on your bus lines and that was it, when it maybe should have been also reached out better on social media. Because if I don't use Metro or Dash anymore, but I would like to be, San Francisco one day with having better transportation than most cities in the state in the state. Because like Lori said, there's so many projects that are being approved by the same guys who approved your plans for parking and everything. We're getting less parking spots, yet we're not getting the actual buses or trains to move us. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that we're dealing with here with our council members. And I hope that in the future that you guys, Metro and Dash, rather reach out to us as well as the neighborhood council, because you'll have our information now. Unfortunately, it took a third party to get Metro involved, but yeah, I just thought I'd include that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. Is there, Kay or Scott, can you say, maybe this number doesn't exist, but how full does a bus have to be to make it worthy of operation? And I don't mean profitable, because I don't know what's profitable and what isn't in the system. Maybe none, and maybe no routes are. But what is your expectation for ridership to consider a route busy?
Yeah, well, I can give a quick rule of thumb, Dan, which would be to have 40% of the seats occupied on average. So obviously when the bus route starts out, it's pretty much empty and it picks up passengers as it goes along. And so you might have a standing load in the middle of the route, but at the end, it's going to drop off. Beginning and the end of the route, you're going to have, single digits on board, maybe just 5 people.
Sure.
So an average of 40% of the seats being full is roughly, 18 people on board the bus on average. And so that's, going to be approximately the same as about 30 boardings per hour of service. Again, just a rough rule of thumb, but 30 boardings an hour would be something that Metro, I think, would want to keep. 30 or more, of course, boardings per hour on our best routes. We're up above 70, 80 boardings an hour on Vermont Avenue and Wilshire Boulevard. And by no means would I expect San Pedro, to generate that much ridership. But just to give you sort of a ballpark estimate, it would be around 30 boardings an hour.
Thank you. And one other thing, and that's not your department, either one of you, but just curious, is money the, the primary deterrent to, you mentioned labor, and I understand that's an issue right now, but overall, in this era in which infrastructure is being touted and emphasized and hoped for, is if the agencies were to get unexpected windfalls of money to play out over several years, would that permit you to revise route plans any more frequently?
Well, for Metro, the MTA board makes those kind of decisions, you know, what to
Sure.
do with the money, obviously. So I'd sort of be speaking out of turn to answer that question. But keep in mind, besides labor and money, that the other two things I mentioned, the ADA and the safety issue, you know, before you even talk about the money, I think, you know, you need to sort of overcome those infrastructure issues. If there's no curb cuts to the bus stop, if there's no painted crosswalk to cross the street to and from the bus stop, then we don't put those bus stops in anymore. There are some in the system that were grandfathered in with ADA. So, you know, you'll still see occasionally a bus stop in the dirt, you know, or on a real narrow sidewalk. But essentially we need 8 feet of firm, you know, stable surface for people to get off the bus. If they're in a wheelchair or using a walker, they need under the ADA to have a 5 foot wide by 8 feet deep stable area, which pretty much means a concrete sidewalk at most of our bus stops. So, you know, if you have a 4 foot sidewalk in San Pedro, and you want to start a new bus stop there, technically it's illegal under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you. Takes us back to our previous agenda item. Better get cracking on those sidewalks. I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Doug Eberhard, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm the president of the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council, and I learned about a lot of this stuff some years back when there was a previous consideration of changing bus routes, and one of the proposals would have pretty much eliminated bus service completely in my entire neighborhood council area. So hopefully we won't end up back there, but here's what I learned. This is a numbers game. And I have to admit, I was very surprised at how low the numbers were. And so a couple of questions. Generally speaking, and maybe you've looked at numbers in San Pedro, both of you, and maybe not lately, but do we see numbers on Dash and Metro generally rising or declining over the last few years? And I know COVID may have had something to do with this too. And when you talk about 40%, are we anywhere near those kinds of numbers on any of the routes in San Pedro?
Thanks, Douglas. This is Scott, and I want to make sure Kay gets to answer some of these questions. But yeah, in San Pedro, the ridership, at least on the metro routes, is pretty low. We do have some peaks on the 950, for example, northbound in the morning. We got early crowd coming out of San Pedro, even in the 5 a.m. hour, and we have added trips over the past 5 years, certainly pre-COVID, to meet that demand. But the general trend for ridership is going down even before COVID. So since 2014, I believe we've lost riders in the transit system in general, and this is kind of a nationwide trend. And I think it has to do with, you know, prosperity. The economy was booming, and a lot more people were able to afford cars. And you know, there's other factors, obviously, with different modes, maybe cutting into transit mode a little bit. You know, and I'm talking about Uber and scooters and bicycles, bike share, and people just walking, and which is all good. But the trend has been down. I'm happy to say it's starting to come back from COVID now. We reached a low point probably in just in December, January of this year when the cases were spiking, and we've seen a nice recovery since then. Obviously, with schools reopening and some of the mask mandates being dropped, although you're still required to wear a mask, by the way, on metro buses and trains. But people are coming back. And Kay, you may want to speak about the dash.
Yeah, basically, general trends is, same as Metro. The last couple of years, we have seen like a decline in transit ridership, but we are happy to say that I think starting maybe February, March, we have seen a pretty big increase in ridership. So hopefully we will get back to, the pre-pandemic ridership soon. But, this decline in ridership, that's exactly why, at least for us, LADOT, we wanted to, increase investment in transit, and we instead of cutting, increasing headways, some things like that to account for decreased ridership. We felt that it was important to do the opposite, so transit would be more enticing for riders, and we don't continue to see a decline in ridership. And to answer your question about San Pedro, I would say, everything is relative, and relative to our other routes, I'd say San Pedro is probably in the middle of the pack. There's definitely routes that we have like East LA or, downtown, that gets quite a bit more ridership than San Pedro. San Pedro, we averaged, I think, 400 passengers per day. And then other routes you see like 600, 800. But then on the lower end, we do have routes that do like 200. So I'd say San Pedro would be in the middle of the pack, at least for Dash. Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank you. And one more quick question. Do you ever come to these meetings and people tell you that they want less bus service? Just kidding. I'm guessing you never get that one. All righty, thanks.
Yeah.
John DeMiglio.
John is at work, by the way, which explains his image on the screen. Thank you.
John, you got your hand up? Okay, we'll come back. Is there any other questions for the?
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Now
me?
we can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If you don't improve the lines and you don't improve the routes, you're not going to ever gain any more ridership. And right now, that's why people don't ride it, because they don't get their destination on time and fast enough, and the routes aren't great. So we need to work on this ASAP. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right, John. We do need to improve the frequency to get the riders back, and because people won't ride I always say if the bus door doesn't open, they can't get on the bus. So 2 buses an hour is what NextGen is striving for, or have a bus every 30 minutes, compared to the hourly service that we have out there today on a lot of the routes. So as we recover from the pandemic and get the labor force going, we should be able to restore some of that higher frequency service, which will boost the ridership.
I have a question. I've been a mechanic all my life, and and I've worked on heavy duty equipment and stuff. I've working at the airport. These electric buses that they're proposing, What's your take on them? I mean, are they going to be, can they, like, how many trips could they go from back and forth to downtown LA or to, you know, or back here to San Pedro and back down? And your facilities, your charging facilities, like here in San Pedro, where would you have the time to charge them, and you know, what the location would be?
Yeah, great question, John. You know, the electric bus, we don't have a whole lot of experience with it yet. The San Fernando Valley Bus Rapid Transit, known as the Orange Line, has them, the electric buses on, and you know, we have some growing pains with them for sure. That the range, mileage range expected to be, you know, about 150 to 200 miles, and it really depends how much load you put on the motor, because, you know, if you're running the air conditioning and you're going up a hill, you know, that range might only be 120 miles. So we are very concerned, and so we're building not only the chargers at the bus yard so they can charge overnight, but also en route charging at the Harbor Gateway Transit Center, which is on 182nd Street in near Vermont. We are installing some overhead chargers there, so when the buses come from El Monte, they can stop and pick up a quick charge. Also at LAX, we are building a new rail station on the Crenshaw line at 96 and Aviation, and that facility just started construction, so it'll be a few years, but the bus hub there will also have these electric overhead chargers. In San Pedro, we are not planning to install any, because we're sort of betting that the range will improve, and that the 950 will be able to get all the way from El Monte to San Pedro and back. So that's about, you know, an 80-mile trip before it needs to charge. And you know, we're going to learn as we go along. We don't know exactly what the performance is going to be, because, you know, the manufacturers usually give one number, but that's without the bus being full of people, you know, without 100-degree weather that we can get sometimes here in LA. And so yeah, we're going to learn as we go along, but we're looking forward to it. Obviously, for the air quality purposes, the bottom line for transit, you know, is that we contribute to cleaner air and cleaner water. And the more people that ride the buses and trains, the better for everybody.
Yeah, when I know LAX, you know, I worked for Continental Airlines for many years, and I remember we tried it. They have tugs out there, the little tractors that pull the baggage cart. They've turned them into, you know, battery, and they're belt loaders that where the guy throws the bag on and goes into the belly of a plane. They just came out, FMC, which is a company that builds cargo loaders, where they load the container onto the belly of the plane. Just in the last 3 years, they've come out with finally an electric unit. But the nice thing is, it only goes forward, hooks up to the plane, and then goes back, and they just put it back on the charger. Pushback tractors as big as the buses, you know, that pull the planes in and out, those were the ones that were having a problem, because the batteries have to be so huge to maintain and pull back a 747 or an A300 or a 777. Just becomes a problem, and that's why it says, I know the buses couldn't get, you know, much more than that, especially with loads. That's the whole key. If the generator puts out, you put a heavy load, you know, 10, 15,000 pounds on it, of course it's going to work more, and it's going to use up more more battery power. So
yeah, we run 24 hours a day. So some of these buses are out there like 18 hours, and the existing buses can do, you know, like 300-mile range with the compressed natural gas. But so obviously, you know, we're going to have to sort of rework the schedules a little bit to make sure there's enough time for the buses to charge en route, and we'll go from there.
okay, yeah. So that's, yeah. Hopefully, you know, we're still quite a ways from. I think battery operated even cars and stuff. We're still quite a ways from being perfect, but, anybody else? Oh, let's see. Chuck, go ahead, Chuck.
Tongue in cheek, the Target parking lot will be a good quick charge station.
Yes, it would. See? Go ahead, Dan.
Quick question, it's only partly related. Can you tell me, Scott, why the designations were on the rail lines were changed from colors to letters?
Yeah, we are getting to be too big, our rail system, and we're running out of colors essentially. And further complicated is that the regional connector, which is a light rail project in downtown LA, it's only going to add 2 stations, but it's going to link together what today are 3 different light rail lines into 2. And so having the different colors, so for example, from Long Beach is the blue line, and it's going to connect to the gold line that goes to Azusa. Rather than using the blue and the gold, trying to hybrid that somehow, it's the letters are picking up for that, and it's going to be the A line, or the Long Beach part already is the A line. And so it's based on it being the first rail line, the modern rail line that opened in 1990. So the A line followed by the B, which used to be the red line, and the C, which used to be the green line. So that's kind of the logic behind it. The Crenshaw line will be also opening hopefully this year, and it'll be the K line. So we are, we got 26 letters in the alphabet, and I don't think we're planning to build 26 rail lines, so we should be okay.
Very good. Thanks. Just curious.
I don't know. There's plenty of colors out there. You can have the violet line, the magenta line. I mean, right? I mean, or chartreuse would be a great line,
And there's always, cream and eggshell and off-white. And
Okay.
Anybody else?
Looking good.
We're looking good. Well,
Thank you,
Scott.
gentlemen.
Okay, we appreciate you guys coming and joining us, and talking to the group here and all that. And we look forward to hopefully having some new stuff out there. And if you keep us posted, Kay, you can send me that stuff so I can send it to David, and and anybody else that wants it, I'll send it to those. Then they'll see the new routes and stuff. And Scott, same thing.
Okay.
You guys have my email, so yeah.
Sure. Sounds good. We'll keep in touch, and you guys, continue to lobby for what you think the community needs, and eventually it'll happen.
We have our work cut out for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let me see here. Let's go into, I just need to ask a couple of questions. Ashley and Emma Portillo, are you guys from the high school? Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I'm from San Pedro High School.
Okay. And your teacher is?
Eric Mosberg.
That's the same one from last night.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have that, Victor? You should have that.
I mean, we've had the name before. She's been at a couple other meetings before, including Melanie is usually the one who notifies the school. So I think she has the information.
Okay, I'll let Melanie know. Thank you, Ashley, for joining us.
Thank you.
And Emma Portillo, are you also from the high school?
Emma, put your hand up if you are from the school. Okay, it doesn't look like Emma is, only Ashley.
Okay, not a problem. All right. Sorry, guys, on the agenda, I put down April 26th for the next meeting. It's supposed to be May 23rd. I can't believe it. I messed up. Can you believe my first, doing this? Just, I slept since then. What can I tell you, Does anybody have anything before we conclude? Nobody? All right. So does everyone agree that we can end our meeting? All in favor? Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. We'll see you next month, and we should have some other stuff for our agenda, and Dan and I will work on it. And if any of you have anything that you'd like to, throw my way, email it and to Dan and I, and we'll put it on the agenda. Okay. Well, listen,
Thank
everybody
you
have a great weekend, rest of the week, and Chuck, get a haircut. So everybody have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Dan. See you guys. Vic, stop the recording.